The Laugh and Run podcast is brought to you by Dead Bodies in Ken's car. Why does he have a dead body in his car? I don't know. Let's ask him. That is the most serial killer gesture to... I don't know. All right. Well, Jesus. The Laugh and Run podcast is also brought to you by me breaking into Ken's car and pretending to be a dead body. He's gonna sue me. And lastly, the Laugh and Run podcast is brought to you by Milk. Milk makes a body strong, so strong that it can break into Ken's car, steal his driver's license, and frame him for murder. This is the Laugh and Run podcast.
It's the Laugh and Run podcast with Ken Holmes and Tommy McClellan Willard.
All right, buddy, how you doing?
Doing great.
Good, man. I got Wawa again. Last time they made me milk. This time it's coffee. The one great. So, do you ever get food at Wawa?
Yeah, I do. I do. Yeah, I like their are they the ones that have them made to MTOs, or isn't that what it is, or is that Sheets?
That might be Sheets.
Okay. Well, regardless, I always get the two mixed up, but yes.
It's indefensible, but all right. No, it's all right. So I got I have a pounding headache, so I'll try to keep the energy up. But I got Wawa this morning for breakfast, and I don't typically eat like breakfast sandwiches like with the bagel, but they had the option, and it's like brand new, and I'm like, oh, that's dope. I'm gonna roll with it. It was delicious. It was delicious. Here's why I'm annoyed. It plastered on their screen like brand new. This is new for us. I clicked on it. Then it said try our signature options. Like, how the do you have signature options if it's brand new? Like, it's just shitty marketing. You need to be more honest with people. Like, what are you doing?
They're just getting everybody ready for Hoagie Fest, right?
Hoagie,
isn't that
like
isn't
you
Wawa
can't
do
be
that?
brand new and be like we tried it for 3 days. People seem to like it.
It's a staple. It's a staple in our line.
Alternatively, a staple for them, they have a sandwich called the Gobbler.
Yes, I know. Yes,
You know what's up, right?
Yeah, it's like Thanksgiving on a hoagie.
It's amazing. It's delicious. It's seasonal, right? So I think it's just like October, November time.
Yeah.
So good. I'm raving about gas station sandwiches. So for sure, white trash. That is evident to me now. But I'm okay with that. That's
Hey, I mean, as a rep, as we would call it, a road warrior. Those are your food options. You know, you can't really have like a homemade meal every day.
I think Nelson just killed himself. Are you okay? What happened? Oh, all right, good. I'm glad he didn't shoot himself in the face. That would have been bad.
Our production manager, he's gone.
Victoria like that. Victoria, Ken's wife is in the background. So, all right.
Wave to everybody, Victoria.
So you're in a lab coat. Tell me why you're in a lab coat.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk science today.
Okay.
And when you do science and talk science, you have to wear closed-toed shoes, lab coat, eye protection.
For sure.
If you have long hair, you have to make sure it's pulled back in a ponytail. I'm losing mine, so I do not need to worry about that.
Also, same criteria if you make the gobbler.
Exactly.
Yes.
We would hope.
That is science
would
as well.
hope.
That is science in the most pure form.
But I feel like those who make a gobbler are doing so without gloves on their hands, no hair nets, just free flowing all over the place, you know.
Right.
Probably have sandals on. Definitely not a lab coat.
What is happening? Oh,
Nice.
all right. Our producer is making coffee, so I don't think they'll hear it in the episode. But in the background, I just heard a small hum, and I'm like, oh, good, is coming. This is the end. We're about to die. You sure you don't want to be in on the episode, Victoria? I'm about to ruin all of our careers.
Hey, I got out of the industry. I'm good.
And I
Oh,
just
yeah.
spilled. Don't worry, I'm just spilling stuff on me. When we got out of the car, my wife was like, "Don't forget, you're wearing white." And
That's-
here I am.
That's true. What's in that?
You know, it's just some fluid.
Grounded up gobbler.
Yeah, some grounded up gobbler. You know, say you mentioned you have a splitting headache, and I was working at an expo all weekend, and you know, it's just gotta have my electrolytes.
Yeah,
Gotta replenish them.
it's a good move. Marine Corps. How was the expo?
It was a blast. I mean, like just so busy the whole time. You know, it's just you're constantly going, you're constantly moving, you're standing up for, basically 12 hours a day, and moving. And my body's sore.
Cool,
My
man.
back is sore.
Well,
I'm an old man.
one thing that really helps when you're on your feet all day at an expo is proper footwear.
This is true.
That leads us into what we're talking. We're talking about shoes. Oh my god!
Not shoe ticks, shoe technology.
I can't do it.
Ticks with shoes on.
Ticks with shoes on. Yeah, we're talking about shoe technology. Take me through the main different types of foams that are used among most prominent running brands.
So really two different types of foams that are used. That we could branch off, beyond that, but like there's two major types of foams chemically that are being used. EVA foam. EVA stands for ethylene vinyl acetate. And then you have TPU foams, and TPU foams are like the Beat It foams that we see out in the marketplace. And TPU stands for thermoplastic polyurethane. So like those are the two main types of foams. Of course, like EVA foams have been used for, like decades. I mean, I would say we've probably been using EVA since like the 70s, maybe like early 70s, like the old. Stamped EVA, midsoles that you would find in like some of the classic shoes that we see out on the roads.
I was gonna say TPU is like the new kid on the block,
And
so to speak.
TPU is like the new kid on the block for sure, yeah. And so like the major differences between the two are energy return and longevity and so a lot of companies are really starting to explore this possibility of using this new type of foam in their shoes, and they're designing new experiences for runners out there, and it's a fascinating field for sure to keep track of and to see how it's unfolding, because it's all right up my alley, the science.
Yeah. So I shouldn't say under the impression. I should know, but verify that I'm correct. EVA foam typically is a little on the firmer side compared to TPU, therefore a little bit more naturally stabilizing. So it's really good if you're putting it in like shoes designed to be a little bit more supportive. Is that fair to say, or not as much?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you could say yes and no. You could say that. EVA is a great foam to use. I mean, we've been running shoe companies have been using it since like the 70s, so it's obviously really good, and we're sticking with it and continuing to evolve it and change the compound to increase its lifespan, to increase the amount of energy return that it's giving the consumer. But there are a couple of things that plague EVA foam, like a couple of drawbacks that it will experience, and one of those drawbacks would be its effect to temperature changes.
Right.
And when we talk about that, what we're really talking about is a concept that people are probably going to their eyes are going to glaze over when I start talking about it. But
Well, I'm sold.
it's a topic of thermodynamics. And, thermodynamics is a subsect of physics that studies how it studies how heat, temperature, and what is it? It's heat, temperature,
Would it be energy return?
and something else, and how it's related to energy, matter, and like radiation. So one of the laws, there's 4 laws of thermodynamics, and one of the laws that we would be applicable to the running shoe world would be the first and third laws of thermodynamics. And so when we say EVA foam is sensitive to temperature, that would be the third law of thermodynamics, right? So the third law of thermodynamics is the one that describes 0 degrees Kelvin. And so the third law is simply put, the amount of energy within a system, as it begins to approach 0, the temperature of that system also begins to approach 0. So if there was no energy within that system, there would be no temperature in there. It would be at 0 degrees Kelvin, absolute zero, because none of the particles, none of the atoms, none of the molecules are vibrating. And of course, that vibration is what's causing energy, and it's what's causing the temperature because of the moving around, right? So that's what 0 degrees Kelvin is. That's the third law of thermodynamics. And when you're running an EVA foam shoe, every time you land, you're transferring energy into that shoe because your foot is landing with a force, and the midsole of that shoe is decelerating your foot, and so that deceleration process is transferring the energy is being transferred into heat. The heat is being stored within the midsole of the shoe, and when you have an EVA foam shoe and you're running in it, and that heat is being stored. I'm probably talking in circles right now, but say you run 3 miles, and over the course of that 3-mile run, you can heat your shoe up to 120 degrees. Mm-hmm. And in an EVA foam, what's going to happen is it's going to become softer and more flexible because it's storing that energy. And that's what we're talking about when EVA foams are sensitive to temperature. Of course, on the opposite end of the spectrum, say like you have a mud room that you store your shoes in the wintertime.
Oh, wait, what's a mud room? What's a mud room?
A mud room is just kind of like it's just an entryway to a house. It's like a side room to a house. Like
is that a Virginia Beach thing, or
I've
never? Have you guys ever heard mud? Really?
Yeah,
all right. Well, relax. You don't need to flex on me and be like, I have one. Unlike you, poor son of a bitch, I have a mud room.
Yeah, it's like the first room when you walk through a front door of a house. Like it's often not insulated, so it's subject to whatever the temperature outside is, right?
Gotcha.
Like a garage, you can consider a garage a mud room kind of deal. But you store your shoes there. You go for a run in the wintertime. And you pick your shoes up, and all of a sudden you put them on, and they're hard as a brick.
Right.
And they're really stiff, and that's because all of the energy from the shoes has been removed from it, and you have to go run in the shoes to heat them up to get them to feel how you want them to feel.
Loosen up, right? And then do those same. Whatever. I'm not a smart man. The things you were just talking about. Does that also apply to TPU?
Yes. The laws of thermodynamics are going to apply to anything. But the cool thing about TPU is that more so on the first law of thermodynamics, that's the heat transfer law. So that's talking about how when you're transferring heat into an object. And now I'm like blanking on like the laws of thermodynamics, but it's like cool.
How could you?
I know, right? Jeez, it's like Benson's College. Like
Linda is watching.
I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I got a C in that class. But the heat transfer law, and so TPU shoes they are not subject to temperature. Like they're not subject to temperature changes, and that you don't have to really worry about them changing state. When you increase the temperature or decrease the temperature. The cool thing about TPU shoes is that when you put the shoe on your foot in the store, that's how it's going to feel when you finish running a marathon. It stays incredibly consistent. When I worked a couple years ago, I was working for a company where I was their tech rep, and we had just introduced a TPU midsole foam shoe for the first time. And we were not the first ones to do it by any means, but we were kind of like the first ones to really get it out there to a lot of the consumers to kind of let them experience it. And I would go to a lot of fun runs, and I would have these TPU shoes and have customers try them on. And inevitably every time we would have somebody come back and they would say I don't know what it was, but the shoe just kept getting harder on my run. And I would have to stop them and say well, no, subconsciously your brain is telling you that your shoe should be getting softer as you're going on your run because you're used to running in EVA foams. And that's what happens with an EVA foam. It's going to get softer and more flexible the longer you run, right? But that doesn't happen with TPU. So being that it was staying the same softness, the same flexibility the entire time. It remains incredibly consistent. Then your brain is tricking you to think like it's not getting softer. It must be getting harder. What's going on here?
Right.
Kind of deal.
Do you in that same vein? So, like you're saying, EVA, TPU, and then you can do things to both. Is one cheaper than the other? Because I was always under the impression EVA is like a little bit cheaper to manufacture.
It is, yeah. And so in a previous episode we had talked about how like I was talking about how like the longer you work with a foam, you're going to develop new ways of manufacturing it. Like you're gonna have more time with working with it. You're gonna understand it better. So now, yes, you're right. Yeah, EVA foam is cheaper to manufacture than TPU. But give it 20 years, 10, 20 years down the road, I would imagine TPU is going to be much cheaper to manufacture because we'll have that time where we're able to work with it.
Oh, okay. So it's not necessarily a materials correlation to price. It's more of a time and our understanding of how to manipulate it in correlation to price.
Well, I mean, like the way that the world works, yeah. I mean, the materials are always going to cost
right
a certain amount, and like you have inflation, and like prices are always going to go up. But yeah, I mean, naturally, you're just going to want to work with a substance to sort of counteract those inflation rates. So you can as a business owner, you can save your bottom line.
Right. Speaking of that, and because I do want to get into TPU more and like how it turns into P-backs, et cetera. But I think so. A thing I hear a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is like, oh, well, like, is this shoe made in America? Especially with a little bit older demographic, and it's like, no, none of them are. And part of the reason, to my understanding, is because it would just cost too much money. Like most of these materials aren't really natural to our environment, and then it would cost a lot of money to ship a lot of them over, like certain latexes and stuff, to have it like shipped over and then manufactured here. Do you know, like, is that right, or am I totally off? Just speaking about like the longevity and price of materials.
No, I mean, like, I think you're on the right path there for sure. I think there's other factors, of course, and one of the other factors is going to be like the cost of labor. Of course, the cost of labor in America is going to be way higher than anywhere else in the world because we have minimum wage, which is a good thing. I'm not saying minimum wage is not a good thing. Like, it's like people should be fairly paid for what they do. So yeah, I mean, like that would be the other thing. That one of the reasons why things are probably made overseas, I would imagine.
Yeah. I just wondered because I hear that a lot. I'm sure you have as well. And it's always like I don't know what to say.
And to the other point of that is that like we have been manufacturing overseas for so long now. Those processes, those technologies,
it's all set
factories,
up.
It's already set up over there. So if we wanted to do it over here, we would have to go through all of that again and get all of that set up. And that's another added cost that, companies are probably like, we don't need to incur that right now.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. So TPU, like you said, thermoplastic polyurethane.
Recycled water bottles. Not really recycled water bottles, but it's basically the same thing. Material sciences are like super fascinating to me. So like, TPU, the midsole that's in your shoe that you have on your foot right now, the Beat It foams, right? So that Beat It foam is the same thing as like, one of those single-use plastic water bottles. That you would buy like from the grocery store or Walmart or places like that. Just like how a styrofoam coffee cup is the same material that's on the windscreen of an F-16 fighter jet.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Like it's just all about how you make it and how you manufacture it and the different polymers that you add to it and. Yeah.
And how you cook it in the kitchen.
Exactly. How you cook it in the kitchen. Yeah.
And then because I understand racing shoes pretty well, and typically the MO with racing shoes, not all, some have longer lives than others, but overall it's okay, like compared to a daily trainer that's TPU based. Now you're moving into P-backs. Like you said, P-backs is just, it's how you cook it in the kitchen, putting polymers to it.
Yep.
You're going to lose a little bit of life, but you get more responsiveness to
Yeah.
it, right? So I guess do you think there'll ever be a time where you can get that light responsive fastness from a racing shoe but still have the longevity and durability that like TPU at its like daily training form will give? Do you know
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
mean,
trying to ask?
we see that now. Like we currently have that in the marketplace available for customers to buy at this moment in time with racing shoes. A lot of the super foams that are being used in racing shoes nowadays, like TPU, P-backs, all of these different types of foams are incredibly resilient because of that resistant to temperature change. Because they are so energy efficient and they're so bouncy, they're not going to break down as quickly as something like an EVA foam would. So like typically when we're working in Run Specialty and a customer is like, oh, well, how long is this shoe going to last? We all say the same thing: 300 to 500 miles, 6 to 8 months, somewhere around there, right?
Generally, I mean, it ranges by shoe, but yeah.
Yeah. So, so typically like a TPU foam, I still say the same thing, but I'll say like you're probably going to be on the upper end of that spectrum where you're going to want to replace your shoe. And then with an EVA foam, you're going to be on the lower end of that spectrum.
So certain shoes, without naming any specific that are TPU based, I always preface it with depending on your build and how hard you're landing, because that obviously plays a huge role. But
Yeah.
there are certain foams that have shown to last up to like around 800 miles before starting to break down.
Yeah.
As where you get into the P-back shoes, to my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, they'll last typically like, let's say 350 to 400. Again, depending on your build, how hard you're landing. And that's still really good, especially for a racing category shoe, because I think for the longest time it was like you get like 150, 200 ballpark with certain brands and certain approaches. So I guess like to like be more hyper specific, do you think that there'll ever be a time where it's like, wow, we have this shoe that is insanely responsive, insanely fast, but is going to last that like daily training, like 600 to 800 mile range before starting to break down?
Yeah. I mean, like for sure, I think so. I'm going to put my sales rep hat on here for a second.
And if I'm wrong, tell me.
No. You're not wrong. Like, but like, we don't want that. We want you to come back and get another shoe. We want you to buy again. We don't want to develop a shoe that's going to last forever.
Forever, right?
And that's kind of sad to say, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Sure.
It's how we keep the world turning.
Sure. Well, I also think like, and part of the reason I ask is because, to my knowledge, it's not, even if what you said wasn't true, it's really difficult to get something to be insanely light and responsive and fast that like you're gonna, if you want to qualify for Boston, you're gonna qualify for Boston, or if you want to run at the Olympic trials, you're running in that. I think it's pretty hard to get that level of elite shoe mixed with this can last you super, super long, right? Like when this category of shoe, the plated carbon fiber plated shoes just came out, probably like 6-7 years ago, maybe 8.
Roundabout, yeah.
Kind of the notion, like I remember talking to a couple of elite runners and it was like, yep, I have, pair X and 2 races and then they are done. And it's 2 marathons, but that's 53 miles basically. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, and it seems like that's changing. Like the pair I have on, just you pointed out, this is like some of the most durable fast shoe there are.
Right.
It's just interesting to see like where the ball post keeps moving.
Yeah, and I would say like maybe early on in the plated shoe innovation, yeah, for sure there were foams out there that wore out super quick. But the other thing that I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily think about, or maybe that kind of glaze over it, is the fact that in a plated shoe, it's 2 layers of foam that are have a plate sandwiched in between them, and then there's glue that's keeping that whole thing together. And so if you can follow me real quick, as your foot lands on the ground, right? When your foot goes flat, you're eventually going to go off onto your toe, right? You're going to toe off. However, when your foot is completely flat, your momentum is still carrying you forward because you're moving forward, right?
Right.
So you're going to have a shear force, and a shear force is, it's going to move like, forwards and backwards force acting on the midsole of the shoe. And so like if you were to actually draw a line on your midsole, like a vertical line straight up and down, and you were to like, videotape yourself running on a treadmill, and we were able to slow it down, when your foot would land flat, that vertical line would be shifted, because the shear force is acting on that shoe.
Gotcha.
And that's another piece that's going to cause the shoe to wear out prematurely or wear out quicker, because that those layers of foam are going to start to delaminate. And that glue is going to start to come undone. And especially if you're a heavier runner, or if you're like putting a lot of force through the shoe as well, like that's another force that we're going to have to like look at to engineer, to counteract, to help the shoe last a whole lot longer.
Right. Yeah, no, makes sense. Talking about plated shoes, moving into like the daily training stuff. Right now, I'd say like the space race for shoes is, I don't even want to say cracking, because there are a couple brands that are doing it really well, but it's more so like making it publicly known of the like quasi carbon fiber plated daily training shoes.
Yes.
You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So everyday plated.
Everyday plated, right?
If you will. Yeah. So I mean, like, first off, I'll say running every day in a carbon plated shoe is bad.
It's not great.
Am not a doctor. I know I'm wearing a lab coat and I look official, but I am not a doctor by any means.
That's not what you told me when you gave me my physical.
Look, just bend over and don't ask any questions. All right. But like running every day in a carbon plated shoe is not good. The main purpose of a carbon plated shoe is to have that carbon plate in there to be incredibly rigid, to not allow the shoe to flex like at all and to bend, right?
Right.
So because your foot is going to want to bend when it's like naturally walking if you were barefooted, right? So the carbon plate keeps the shoe stiff. And the geometry. So if you ever look at a carbon plated shoe, like it has that dramatic drop off in the forefoot, and it's that geometry that's going to help push your hips forward to allow you to get a quicker turnover rate, to allow you to run faster at an easier effort. So you're not having to expel as much energy.
Right.
But the drawback of that is that it's not allowing your foot to work. So your plantar muscles, right, the muscles on the bottom of your feet they're not flexing, they're not working because the shoe's doing all the work for you.
Right.
Doing that for an extended period of time, potentially, you could create muscular imbalances, which could lead to injuries later on down the road, right? So now we have this new category of shoe that I like to refer to as everyday plated, where you can have a shoe that has like either, a 3/4 length carbon fiber plate or something with like a nylon plate in there, that you can still get the benefit of having that geometry in the forefoot to allow your hips to go forward, to have that quicker turnover rate. But when you land on your heel, the shoe's still going to flex and it's still going to work, and your plantar muscles can still work as well at the same time. So that's going to allow people to be able to still get that same experience, but being able to use it every day. I also like to refer to that everyday plated shoe category, as I like to refer to it, as the gateway drug into the plated shoe community.
Sure.
Right? Like,
yeah.
When I run in something that's carbon plated, I feel like I'm being forced to run on my toes, right? I don't like to be forced, but when I'm running in something with, an everyday plated, like, I feel like I'm being encouraged to get up onto my toes, right? And it's going to help me build and cultivate those muscles that will allow me to run on my toes the entire time. And it's not necessarily saying that running on your toes is the perfect way to run, You know, the way that your body wants to run is the perfect way for you to run. However, running on your toes is more efficient, right? So when you're running on your toes, you're using your hamstrings and your glutes the entire time, and you're more or less just sort of gliding along, right? When you are running where you go heel to toe, when you land on your heel, you're activating your quad, which is going to break you. And then when you get onto your toe, then you're going to use your hamstrings and your glutes to reaccelerate. So you're having to expel more energy, more or less, going from heel to toe. Yeah, I mean, it's however you run is however you run. But, you know, certainly the plated shoes are going to help you save some energy there. They're going to help you cultivate those muscle groups so you can run faster for longer periods of time without having to expel so much energy.
Yeah, my past couple of runs, I've been running in an everyday carbon fiber training shoe, and it took me a little while to warm up to it. But now being in it, I'm like, it's still super well cushioned. It has actually a pretty big stack height, but it does. I really like what you said because I've never thought of it that way, where it doesn't feel like it's forcing me, but encouraging me, and just it's a really fun shoe.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's part of my rotation of footwear. You know, I like a lot of cushion. So I use a high cushion neutral shoe and a nylon plated, more or less everyday plated, shoe as well. And that's my general rotation that I like to play around with.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
All right, I got 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up. One thing I hear a lot, and it's always a funny conversation because people typically seem to have a misunderstanding. They'll come into a store or whether it's a running store or a comfort store or a big box store like Dick's Sporting Goods, and they'll be like, "I need a shoe with good arch support." And it's like, well, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, totally. I always use the same example, and get ready to bleep this one out because we're not going to get sued on this episode.
Okay.
All right. So I always say you can take somebody with a flat foot and put them in and they're going to be like, "Oh man, I really feel the arch support in this bad boy." And I go, "Well, you look down and you can see their foot hanging off the side of the shoe." And it's like, "Nah, homie, like that's just squeezing the crap out of your arch." So that's what I guess people are talking about when it comes to arch support in shoes is that it's based off of the last. And so the last in shoes is the shape of like the bottom of the shoe and how it's curved.
Yep.
If you have a shoe that has a really narrow midfoot area, it's like very, I think the term is like waist it through the midfoot. Inevitably, somebody is always going to say that has a really good arch support or it has a really high arch, but it's not. It's just squeezing the crap out of your foot. So the way shoes are manufactured traditionally, not all companies are like this. There's one company out there that's doing something different, is that it's just a flat piece of foam on the bottom that your foot's sitting on top of.
Right.
And you're not really getting any arch support. That sock liner that's in the footbed of the shoe that you can just like rip out, that is made with no support. It's 3 millimeters thick. It's flimsy. And that's why if you want arch support, you should invest in something like an insert to put in your shoe to give you that support to not allow your arch to collapse.
For sure, because there are also different arch heights and types. So
Correct.
like there are brands out there that will have an insert that's more catered to people with low arches like myself. They'll make inserts that are catered to people with high arches, and there are some brands that have maybe a little bit of a stiffer, bigger plate to stabilize the foot more. If you were somebody like maybe my grandmother who's not going out and running, but just like walking day to day.
Yeah.
And then there are some that have more like dynamic plates that'll really cater to the athletic person while still giving you support. Right?
Yeah,
Is that fair
yeah.
to say?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah. And so I mean like it's a whole science. Like when you get to run specialty, I always love the people who come to Run Specialty and they just go straight to the shoe wall and they're like, oh, like let me look at all the colors and like, oh, I need to try this shoe. My neighbor told me that this shoe was great, and like, oh, my friend has this one and I need to put this one on. And it's I mean, those shoes may be great for your neighbor, it may be great for your friend, but like it might not be the right shape for your foot, you know, and we need to look at your foot and we need to see, you know, all these other shoes out there and what the shapes are and what best matches up with your foot to get the best experience. Because just because your neighbor has something that works for them, it's not necessarily going to work for you.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean what your neighbor's wearing isn't great. It is.
Exactly.
It's just there. A lot of the times, people will come into a running store and be like, "What's the best shoe?" It's like there is no best shoe. Like everything here is quality. Everything here will work for you depending on what you need.
Yeah, I was just working the Marine Corps Marathon Expo this weekend with GU, and so many people came up to me and they would say like, oh, what's the number one flavor? Or what's your favorite flavor? And I have to just be like, that's such an objective question. Like I crave different things at different spots of my run, and you know, I can tell you that the top three flavors for GU are vanilla, tri-berry, and chocolate. Not my top three favorite flavors,
right?
But that's just, you know, it's everybody else. So yeah, I mean, like everybody's different. We're all snowflakes, you know. We got to figure out what's best for us.
Well, I know where you were January 6th.
Yeah, I was sitting at home. Oh God, yeah. Jeez, what a heck of a day that was, man. That was terrible.
You know, so you were living here.
I was living in Old Town Alexandria, right down the street from where all that nonsense was going on. We got like, you know, emergency alerts on our phones, you know, when it was going down, like another emergency on our alert on our phone saying that the governor put this, you know, Northern Virginia in a state of emergency, like National Guard was on their way, like a curfew was now in effect. Like, that was a terrible day. Like, I mean, people that don't live anywhere near here probably don't think anything of it, of like, oh, whatever, that was so far from me. But like, dude, living there, living in it, like, no bueno. Like, nah.
All right. Well,
go home. Stay home. Get out of here.
Let's end on a more positive note.
Sorry about that.
Let's see. Actually, also, Nelson, how long have we been going with this?
About 35 minutes.
Okay. That's pretty good to wrap it up. Do you feel good? Anything else you want to go over shoe-wise, shoe tech-wise?
Let's see. We mostly went over the midsoles, and we went over plated shoe, you know, technology, but you know, I think, you know, something important to mention, more or less that we might have grazed over is just like the everyday, you know, market and the everyday shoes, or even like what's next to come, right? So the next thing that's starting to come out, and the next big thing that we're starting to hear a lot about in the run specialty world is supercritical foam, right? And like, the important thing to know about that is that it's a lot of companies are using it as like a marketing ploy to make themselves sound a lot cooler than they actually are.
It does sound really cool.
It does sound really cool, and I'll explain all about it here in a second. But like, when I say it's like marketing, I say it's kind of like when you're at the grocery store and you're going through the olive oil section and you see one particular can of olive oil that says cholesterol free olive oil, and it's like, no shit, olive oil is a plant-based product,
right? There's
no cholesterol in it to begin with. I'd be more worried if there was cholesterol in there. It's like, what do you add bacon into there?
Right.
You know, like,
if you get some pork oil.
Yeah, you gotta get that pork oil in there. So like, yeah, I mean, so supercritical foam, we're talking about how we're manufacturing it, right? Mm-hmm. So we're using either a supercritical version of nitrogen or carbon dioxide. It's proprietary knowledge, which brand uses which. But supercritical, just a quick aside, When the majority of us were in grade school, we learned that there was 4 states of matter. There's solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. But we now know that there's more than just those 4 states of matter. There's supercritical states of matter. There's superconductive states of matter. So it's always important to be reading. It's always important to keep learning, right? Successful people always learn something new every day.
That's why I'm very unsuccessful.
Supercritical states of matter is when you have a nitrogen, for instance, is under a very specific temperature and pressure. It is in a supercritical state that gives it more energy return, and it gives it. Scratch that. We can edit this out.
Oh, we're keeping it in.
Lovely. So it's under a very particular temperature and pressure, to which that this nitrogen, this supercritical nitrogen, is going to be in liquid form, but it's going to behave as if it were a gas. Very crazy to try to wrap your mind around, but that's what supercritical is, right? And so we're using this supercritical nitrogen or carbon dioxide, we're using this supercritical substance as the foaming agent, and it's making the foams foam. So really when you make a midsole of a shoe, it probably is maybe this big when it's manufactured. And then we use a foaming agent to, make it this big, right? Traditionally, we're using petroleum products to make the foams foam. So now we're using supercritical, to make the foams foam. So the cool thing about it is now we're no longer using petroleum products to make shoes.
Right on.
Yeah. But the other really cool thing about that is that with the supercritical nitrogen, and you have temperature and pressure, those are 2 variables that you can change. And that's going to change the foam and how it comes out, right? So you can fine tune and dial in the exact specifications that you want this foam to perform at by changing the pressure, tweaking it a little bit, or tweaking the temperature a little bit to really dial in the energy return and the longevity that you want to get.
Got you. So that's the shoes I have on. It's PBEX material. It's basically TPU added polymers. But then if you want to take this up a step more and make it even more responsive, it's put in a vacuum and gas is added. So that's kind of how you get it to the next level, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so that's the next advent that we've put in running shoes nowadays. And I would say at the point we're at right now, if we're comparing supercritical to non-supercritical, supercritical foams and shoes are probably 2 or 3% better than the non-supercritical version. So it's not really a massive difference by any means. When we're 10 years down the road, it'll be comparing apples and oranges for sure.
Got you. So those more standard, let's even say EVA foam, that is the tried and true. The TPU, the making it in a vacuum, the supercritical foams, we're just getting started with that.
We're just getting started, and don't discount it.
I'm not discounting it.
EVA foams
They're great.
are also supercritical. They will be.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
say more.
Hey, you know what? We're not using petroleum products anymore. We're just saving the earth.
There we go.
One shoe at a time.
All right, good deal. Well, the running foam technology is on the rise. The Laugh and Run podcast is on the rise, and we'll end it there, my man. Do you want to promote your social media or anything going on, or do you not have it memorized still?
Like and subscribe our podcast.
All right. Well,
My Instagram is krock13. There's probably some underscores and some hyphens in there, but yeah.
okay. Well, if you look hard enough, you get Nelson's this guy. He is not prepared.
We got Bill Nye over here. He doesn't care about social.
All right. Well, you can find our podcast at Laugh Run Podcast on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok under the same name. My account is Tommy McClellan 95. We promoted your social media. Oh, the show comes out every second and fourth week on a Sunday. And lastly, I will be headlining the Glove Theater in upstate New York on December 14th. So that'll be really fun. Tickets are going pretty good for what I hear, but still a lot of like general seating. So hope to see you there. If you like this show or you think I'm funny or you want to come assassinate me, any of them are fine with me. So, all right. All right. We'll see you next time. All the love. Cool. Dude, that was great.
Dope.
You crushed it, buddy.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, I
awesome.
fumbled a little bit on my thermodynamics, but
No.
that shit's difficult.